Hey everyone, hope you are having a good week, and I hope you're looking forward to this stream as much as I am. Last week we played a 4th edition game for the first time ever on my channel, and I had some guests with me that had some really great characters, and I had a really good time. So much so that we are going to do another one. We're currently planning it in October, so it's going to be several weeks away. So I'm trying to plan the adventure right now, and looks like we'll do that one. I'm trying to see if I can get enough folks for a second game also. Currently in the progress of doing that. So we'll see. If that works out, then I'll have a second game. If not, then I'll put that one on hold until we have some additional interest on that. So if you are interested in playing one of the games, make sure you subscribe to the newsletter, and then you can sign up to join the list to receive those invitations. So, but tonight we're not playing a game. We are going to do something that I've wanted to do for a little bit, and I know that a couple people have asked me to do it as well, and that is to go through my collection of 4th edition books and talk about some of my favorites and maybe any that maybe I'm not so crazy about. So if you look, you'll notice that my shelf does not have any of my 4th edition books on it because they are all sitting over here, and we'll get to them in a second. So yeah, that's the plan for today. And so I'm interested to see, I'll share my thoughts, and then we'll see if we've got some other thoughts as well from folks on what books you like and what your favorite parts are about some of the books that I have, and some of the books I don't have. I'd love to hear which ones you think I should put a priority on getting. So yeah, with that, please make sure you do like the video and subscribe to the channel if you are not already, but let's get to it and take a look at some of these books. So, there are actually, by my reckoning, there are 76 4th edition, books. That includes the hardcover books, starter sets, essentials boxes, adventures, things like that. There may be some other things, like I don't have like the Living Forgotten Realms stuff or the dungeon magazines. I'm not counting those. Mostly just the official stuff that Wizards had put out there. There may be a few other odds and ends. Like I know that there was some free RPG Day stuff. I have one of those, but I think there's a couple other ones. So I don't really have those on my list though. So, but 76 is the list of things that I've kind of been working against to try to build my collection. And, I currently own 46 of those things. So there are 30 products, official D&D 4th edition products that I do not yet own that I'm still working on. So unfortunately that it kind of gets, I'm getting into the more rare items, because as the game went on and they made less and less or fewer and fewer of the books, they're now harder to come by. So that's something I'm having to deal with, but as I find them and get a good deal on them, I try to snatch them up, and hopefully I'll eventually have all of them. So I don't plan on going through every book in great detail tonight. That would probably take too long. So, but I do have them grouped, and we'll talk through them, and we'll probably dig into some specific books a little more than others. But along the way, I'd love to hear what you have to say about any of the books, and if you've got thoughts on them, then let's certainly share those opinions. So let's get started. Let me flip over to my other screen here. There we go. And I have my Magic the Gathering mat down here. I am not actually a player of Magic the Gathering. I tried it at one point, several times, and I've played it. It just never quite grabbed me. I know it's really popular, and a lot of people swear by it and love the game. And I think it actually makes more money for Hasbro than D&D does even. But I don't know, for whatever reason, I never could quite get into it. So, but I do have the mat because, when I try something, I want to get all the things, and that includes getting the mat. So, but as far as the books, I want to start at the beginning, with two of my prized possessions, and that is these, Wizards Presents books. I have these as, these are original copies right here. I also have, you can get them as a print on demand from Drive Thru RPG. So I also have a print on demand copy. So I've got 2 copies of each of these. But these are two of my favorite books for fourth edition. What I love about these is that whereas like when they're releasing the 2024, they had the YouTube videos that they would put out kind of talking about what they were doing and why they did it and things like that. When fourth edition came out, YouTube was only a few years old. And so this was really still the way that you would communicate stuff. And it's like, you're not going to have that anymore. Now you just put it on a website or you put it on a YouTube video. But here at the end of 2007 and then the beginning, well, the other way around, end of 2007, beginning of 2008, they put out these two books that went into how they were approaching fourth edition. And you got a preview of some of the artwork. You got a lot of information about what they were trying to do and how they were kind of really setting aside a lot of the stuff that was had been with D&D for a long time to not really worry about having to live into this, these old notions of D&D, but really try to do something special. And I think that's one of the shames about the fact that fourth edition didn't take off, is that they really were trying to do something really good. It wasn't just an incremental change. They were trying to revolutionize the game. In much the same way I feel that when they went from second edition to third edition, they really made a big change to how the game was played. I think they were trying to do the same thing with fourth edition. And you can see that in these books. And I think it's great that they have these and you can actually have a physical copy of them and hold on to them. So they're a couple of my favorite things to just look through and see how they approached all this. It was really nice. So yeah, I've got two originals, or one of each of the originals, and then a print on demand copy of those. So that's where the starting point. I'm not going to go chronologically, even though these were the first things that were released. But they were just, I think they just really set the stage for fourth edition. I just point out there's no mechanics in this. So these were released before fourth edition came out. There's artwork. There's some, you could say kind of some lore stuff in here about how they're approaching different things, but there's no actual mechanics. So if you got these at the time, you wouldn't have actually seen anything in how the game was played or anything like that. So that's those. And then the next thing that I have, and these came from I have still on my shelf back there is right there it is the box set, the quick start rules that came out, I believe, in November of 2008, so well after the edition was released. This was just quick start rules. It had some pre-generated characters. These were really very similar to what you got in Keep on the Shadowfell, which was the first product. And there's just slight differences in the characters that you have in this book. And then it's got a little bit of the rules, just a few pages to kind of tell you how to play the game with the mechanics. And then the DM's guide has a whole adventure that you go through, as well as some additional DM type rules. So this is the starter set. This one is kind of hard to find, so I was happy when I was able to get this one. I think I got this one on eBay. The box set, it has unpudged cards and tokens and stuff like that in it. So I took these down from there just to share them here. But so that's another one of my more collector's item type thing, is the quick start rules from there. So and then I think we'll jump into the main things that anybody would get when you're starting the game, and that's the player's handbooks. So naturally, when I first was playing, I didn't get a player's handbook at first. I had the red box starter set was my first thing, and then I couldn't wait till I could actually buy a player's handbook. So naturally, this is where most people are going to start. I actually just today bought another copy of the player's handbook because it was pretty cheap at Noble Knight, so I went ahead and got another one for myself. So I'm looking forward to getting that. I've only recently gotten the second and the third player's handbook. This one is well used, gotten quite a bit of use out of it. I think the second one might be, I don't know that it's better than the first one, but I like the fact that it has a lot of those really cool classes: Barbarian, Bard, Druid, Sorcerer. So you need the second book in order to get those classes, and so those are in this one. So I really feel like these two books kind of are the essentials for what you need if you're a player to cover as many of the classes as possible, is to get those. The third player's handbook does have the psionic characters, which makes it pretty awesome because those characters are amazing. I did an unboxing of the powers book when I got that before. So that one is pretty good because of the fact that it introduces the psionics. So I like having that one. The other thing that's in the third player's handbook is they did these skill powers, and I'm curious what other people think about the skill powers. I think they were trying to respond to the fact that people said that the game was all about combat, and it didn't have enough stuff with for non-combat stuff. So they started putting these skill powers out there that you could get. I don't think they were necessarily effective. I get what they were trying to do, but it's a hard sell for me to take some of these skill powers in place of some other powers. So I think they're neat. I like them. I think they're probably, and if given a little time, they probably would have played a more part of the game. But this one came out so late in the life of 4th edition. When was this? This was March of 2010. So I mean, it's two years into the game. But by then, I think they already knew things were not going well with it. So, so I don't know. So I'm just, looking, curious what other people, if you've used skill powers. I've not actually used them. I know that they're in this book and they look interesting. They're kind of like, almost like feats in a way. It's kind of another variation of feats. And I think the rule is that you have to like take one of those instead of another power. And that's kind of like in 5th edition where you have to choose whether you want to up your ability score or take a feat. You got to make that tough choice. And if you have to choose between taking a skill power versus another power for your class, that might be tough unless you're playing a character that really is heavy on the skills. That then I don't know. I like the fact that they tried it. Again, they were trying stuff, trying to make it work, listening to feedback and everything. But but it was probably a little too late, I suppose, for it. So. But players handbooks, that's my next set. I've got all of those. So, and a lot of these I have PDFs of as well, but I have a bunch. I have way more PDFs than I have of the physical books. But and there's a few physical books I don't actually own the PDFs for. Let's see. Next, we'll stick with the core books for now. Dungeon Master's Guide. If you've been around my channel any length of time, then you probably know that I feel that these are two of the best Dungeon Master's Guides for any edition of Dungeons and Dragons, possibly for any role-playing game. The strength that they have going for them is that they are really written for a dungeon master to run the game, to put together adventures, to put together encounters, and to actually run the game when you're running it. It's got tons of great information. The 5th edition Dungeon Master's Guide is a disappointment for me. That's one of the things I don't like about 5th edition. There's so much stuff in here. And, again, for all I'll open it up to the page about combat when I'm about to talk about how it's not all combat, but, as much as people say that it is all combat, there's so much in these books that cover what you can do as you're building an adventure outside of combat. And I think probably the second Dungeon Master's Guide has even more of that because it talks about building stories and creating kind of like side quests, creating like backdrops for your characters, creating a historical perspective of the story. So not just running the encounters, but so much more than that. And they've got tables in them that you can use to roll new dungeons, to put together your encounters and create monsters. I think the encounter building information here is excellent. So I think, these I said it before, I'll say it again. These two books are two of the best D&D books that I think I've ever owned. So they're excellent. And I pointed out a while ago that the cover of the player's handbook is actually inside the little orb in the Dungeon Master's Guide, which I've always thought was amazing. So, I mean, just a little nice little touch, I think. So, but, so yeah, those, if you're a DM looking to run D&D or any other game, I would recommend you get these because they are super helpful. Vignettes, that's the word I was looking for. I couldn't remember what they were called, but that's what that was the cool part about, that whole non-combat, it's not just building encounters, it's about really creating these stories. So that's just some of the stuff that you get in there. So kind of held them out there already, but monster manuals, no surprise, that's the next place I was going to go. I'm not a huge fan of monster manuals. They're a necessity. They're a great tool because you need them in order to build an encounter. Though the interesting thing for me is that the way that 4th edition is set up, if you look at, like I'm going to just quickly go and look at like a goblin. So, you don't have a goblin in 4th edition. You have these variants because they have the different roles that they would play. And so you don't have, there's nothing in here that's just a goblin. It's a cutter, a black blade, a sharpshooter, warrior, hexer, and they all have specialties based on what their role is going to be. So this one's a lurker, there's a minion, a skirmisher, a leader, artillery. So with the monster manuals, it's almost more about you got a lot of nice variety in these, but but in a lot of cases you build your own monsters because you can create a monster that does exactly the thing that you need, which is what they've done. They've created they've created goblins that do very specific things. And then when you're creating adventure, you would probably create a goblin that does things that you need for your adventure. And it's really easy to do that because they've given you those rules to do that. They do that in other editions as well, but I think it's laid out very nicely in these. So, and I think their approach to doing that is really helpful, because one of the challenges I have when I'm building an encounter is that I'll go and I'll say, ooh, I would like an encounter with some type of monster. And I'll go look in the monster manual, and all of the monsters they have in there, they'll have like one and it'll be a level 14. And it's like, well, I'm making a level 5 encounter and I can't use that. And so I've got to go and reshuffle it anyway. Well, you've got the rules in here to do that. And it's kind of expected that you're basically going to build whatever monster you need. And so you've got the rules about how to build a monster and give it the right amount of damage, the right armor class, and everything so that it can fit your particular encounter. So they are, as monster manuals go, they're pretty good. I do want to highlight the 3rd monster manual because they made a couple changes. I think someone in the chat pointed out that they changed the math for some of the monsters. I wish they didn't really talk about it too much. I'm not even sure that they mentioned it at all, that they did change the math. I know they mentioned it in where they changed the when you create a monster, how you would use the different armor class, different hit points, and you double the damage and things like that. But they didn't really talk about it much within the monster manual, but they did change the math here so that the monsters have fewer hit points, so that the encounters didn't quite take so long. So, if they had continued on with this and had more monster manuals and the game continued, and every year they did what they wanted to do, where they wanted to have a new player's handbook, a new Dungeon Master's Guide, a new monster manual every single year. If they'd done that and this was what we had going forward, then the monsters would have been just that much better. I also like the stat blocks that they changed the stat blocks for in the 3rd edition, or excuse me, the 3rd monster manual. So you can see that they actually created categories. So it has your traits, standard actions, minor actions. So they didn't have it broken down like that in the old ones, but here they very clearly identified what each of the things was. So I like that they made those changes as well. So that is the monster manuals. So I've got all of those as well. So I mostly focus on the core books as I've been trying to get things. It's the core books that I really want to make sure I have. And so, that's where we'll cover these. I've pretty much got all of the core rule book stuff. So, let's see. Next group. Ooh, there's a lot of books in this one. This is the different powers books. So, I probably should have sorted those, but so Arcane, Primal, Martial, Divine, Psionic. Psionic is actually, I think one of the Martial books is actually my Martial 2, I think is my newest one. But so I've got all of those. This to me is what makes 4th edition special, because you just think about I'll use one of these instead, but you just can have this endless stream of new options that you can give to characters. So you don't have to create an entire new subclass or anything, because you're not really relying on that. Now, maybe when you got to Essentials, there was more of that, but you're not really relying on someone to put together a specific collection of things that a character could do. You're basically just putting these powers out there, and you're letting the player decide, what do I want my character to do? And so by having all of these books where you're just putting out this stream of different things that they can do, it just makes it so flexible in everything. And there's just always more that you can do. And so, the example I've used, you're creating a cleric, and in just the player's handbook, you're going to have a cleric that's got, there's like 4 at-will powers at first level to choose from. You get to choose 2 of them. But you got 4. But then you get the Divine Powers book, and now this is an adventure. So let me look at the cleric here. You've got 2 additional ones. So now you've got 6. And then if you go into some of the other books, there's even more that you get. So as they started publishing more and more of these books, you've got more and more options to choose from. And suddenly a first level cleric has many different paths that it can take and can suit anybody's need for what they want to do. And this whole book is just filled with these powers, and these are just the divine powers, and then you've got a psionic one and an arcane one and a primal one and 2 martial powers ones. So there's just so many things that you can do as a player when you're putting your character together, and so many options that you have for what you want your character to be. You don't have a single subclass that just says, well, which subclass do I want to be? And it's like, okay, that'll give me those group of things. There's recommendations, but you can just do whatever you want. And having all these options is just awesome to me. So that's another set of books that I've got. I've got all of those. So that makes me happy that I've got those. Then next we've got our Adventurer's Vault. The Adventurer's Vault 2, I think I bought the Adventurer's Vault 2 when I first got my D&D stuff. If I remember correctly, I think that was one of the books I got. They didn't have the Adventure Vault 1 in the store, so but they did have the 2. And so I got that one first, and I had that one for the longest time. And then I more recently got the Adventurer's Vault. More so than the monster manuals, these are the books that I like, because I like the magic items and in all the different things. And I talked a little bit about this in my newsletter this past week about magic item powers, and how in 5th edition and other versions of the game, you get a magic item, and like this righteous armor, it's pretty standard, like what you would see for a magic item in 5th edition or another edition of the game. You get a bonus with it, and then that's pretty much what it is. Most magic items are like that, but again, 4th edition took it a step further and said, no, more than that. Some of these things, you're actually going to get a power that you get to do with it. So you get a bonus maybe to your defense or to your attack or something, but you also will have a power that you could use this armor for. And a lot of them, I think most of them are daily powers. So you can only use them once a day. And because of limitations, you could, even if you have a whole bunch of magic items, you could still only use like one of those daily powers across all your magic items. So you are limited in it. But I like the fact that you get all these other things. So in addition to even just the powers from your character class, now you have powers because you get magic items and you get to do really cool things with those. So this is the type of book that I like to look through. Especially as a dungeon master who's putting together an adventure, I'm always looking for a cool magic item that I could give out to the party, and that they could discover as part of a reward, or could be the focus of a quest or something like that. So these two books are two of my favorites because they have the types of things that I really like to just kind of read through and look at. One thing that I do think is interesting in these is that if you look at the player's handbook and at the in the magic item section of the player's handbook, it talks about that there is no ammunition. It like specifically mentions that there's no ammunition, that you have magic items that are weapons, and the weapon is what bestows the magic power to the ammunition that you put in the weapon. Like they originally had the intention that you wouldn't have magic ammunition, but by the second Adventurer's Vault, you actually had a section with ammunition, which I think is important. I'm a little disappointed that they didn't have it from the get-go, because that to me is something that is special, is that you can have a piece of just one piece of magic ammunition that you use that could be really important. You know, that dragon slaying arrow, you know, stuff like that. In the adventure we just did, there was a frost bolt that they got, or was it a firestorm? Might have been a firestorm bolt. And so, you know, by having that one piece of ammunition, you now have something magical that you got to decide when you're going to use that. Whereas if you just had the magic weapon and every piece of ammunition you put into it becomes magical by extension, that's not as special to me. I think having the ammunition is important, and it's just something else that you can do that I think is nice. So, oh yeah, and the magic items. The thrown magic items returned to you. That had come up in our adventure too. I think we had a conversation about that. So the magic items, when you throw a magic item, it actually automatically comes back to you. So, so Adventurer's Vaults, two more of the books I've got, both of those. All right. Let me see. I'm going to rearrange here. Give me a second to rearrange. I've got all the books set off on the side, but I need to shuffle things around so that they don't fall off. And I also don't want to spill my water on anything. Okay, sorry about that. Next, we get into the adventure modules. Now, I by no means have anywhere near all of the adventure modules that were released. I have very few, actually. So we've got Keep on the Shadowfell first. This was actually the first product released for 4th edition. Product, I should say, with mechanics in it. So it came with the set of quick start rules and some pre-generated characters. So this came out, I think, a month before the core rulebooks were released. So anyone that was anticipating 4th edition, this was what you got, was this adventure module, and it had everything you needed to start playing 4th edition. So that's, again, another one why that one's special for me to have, because it's something that really represents the start of this game. And it's a pretty decent adventure. You know, it's fine. I mean, I think most published adventures, they're fine. They could use some tweaking along the way, but you know, for the most part, and especially because 4th edition, just to look at it real quick. So this is the quick start rules. You know, very similar to the starter set that was released later, pre-generated characters and the basic rules. And then you have the adventure module. But, you know, the thing that made 4th edition so easy to run is this layout that you had with the, you know, everything that you need. This is one encounter right here. You've got the monsters right here. You don't need to go to pick up the other books. You've got the map. You've got the tactics, you know, how you set it up. Everything is right there. Time for the next encounter. Oh, well, there it is. You know, it's all right there. So that's, you know, someone getting this, playing 4th edition for the first time and seeing that format, I think is really, really nice. This was part of a trilogy. So you then had Thunderspire, Labyrinth, Pyramid of Shadows. I picked up those because I had Keep on the Shadowfell for a while, but I figured I'd get the other two just to complete that trilogy. and then I have Seekers of the Ashen Crown. I got this when I bought the Eberron book. I'll talk about Eberron more in a little bit, but I wanted to have an adventure when I got the Eberron book, so I got Seekers of the Ashen Crown. I was playing this adventure for my family. We were playing this, and it was right in the middle of playing this when 5th edition came out. So on the fly, I actually changed this and reworked it to be a 5th edition adventure, and then I changed the monsters and everything to fit 5th edition, and we finished it out actually using the 5th edition rules. So I've started it under 4th edition, but I never actually went back and finished it under 4th edition. So, but I don't have most of the other ones. I think I have a couple of the other ones in PDFs, and that's mostly because, I don't even have the maps in here because I want the maps. And I want digital copies of the maps because I do so much stuff in Roll20 and I want to have digital copies of the maps. So I do own more of the adventure modules in digital PDF format so that I could have the maps is why I have that. So, but I think there's at least 2 or 3 more trilogies of adventures that they have. So and if I have to make choices of the things that I'm going to get or not get, the adventures are probably the things that I wouldn't necessarily feel that I need to own the physical copies. It's nice, and if I have the opportunity, I'll get them. But I mostly want the digital maps is what I'm after, because I rarely nowadays run an adventure as written. So having the physical book doesn't mean much for me. So those are the folder type adventures. Now the other ones are the hardcover adventures, and there's a few of these I'm missing as well. Halls of Undermountain, another first day purchase for me. When I first got my initial 4th edition stuff, I got the red box starter set over there, and I bought Halls of Undermountain, and I'm pretty sure I got the Adventurer's Vault too at the same time. So Halls of Undermountain is my first real published adventure module that I ever used. I didn't really quite know what I was doing with it. I wasn't sure how to run it because it was my first time going through it. So I read through this book a lot. The confusing part to me was that, somewhere in here's here's Undermountain. And I was partially expecting that within this book was going to be everything that I would need for this entire dungeon, which is not really the case. So, I mean, it's got a lot in here. It's got a lot of stuff covered. But it's, so, I mean, if you're looking to do Undermountain, I think it's a good source, as good as any other. It's got a whole section talking about for the rooms that are not covered, it's got some tables for you to use. Again, I was really cutting my teeth on this book, trying to figure out how to actually run an adventure with randomized monsters and all that sort of stuff. But so naturally, that's my first, so that was special. Oh, this is another one. I got this one on the same day. So the Halls of Undermountain, and I picked this. They had the Dungeon Magazine annual as well, which has some of the adventures that had been previously published in the Dungeon Magazine. I've not actually run any of these, so they obviously had plans to publish these annuals, but they only ever did one Dungeon Magazine annual, and they did one Dragon Magazine annual. I do not have the Dragon Magazine annual. So it's a nice hardcover collection of some of those Dungeon Magazine books. And then I'll go to Dungeon Delve first. This one is really nice. This one I've gotten relatively recently, and I like that. I like that it goes through every single level of the game. You've got 30 different delves, and each one of them is broken up into 3 parts. So you could run this from start to finish. Excuse me. Sorry about that. You could take starting with characters at first level and run this all the way through to 30th level and have it. It's not linked. It's not an adventure. It's not meant to be a single adventure. It's not, you would have to put together some story to connect all this. But if you're looking for an episodic type adventure where you just do something different every single time, then here you go. It's got all the stuff that you would expect with your encounters. There it is. There's your encounter, and there's the next one. There's the next one, and it just on and on. The entire book is nothing but a list of encounters. really leans into the dungeon tiles, which some of these dungeon tiles are really hard to find. I mean, you're like not going to find physical copies of these dungeon tiles anymore. You can find some places, I shouldn't say that you can download them, which you shouldn't, because they're not selling them. But they're out there. But they're usually like scanned and they're not very good quality and stuff. So they're not easy to get the dungeon tiles. So you really got to make up your own maps to use with them, but that's fine. That's usually what I would do anyway. But it was a way for them to try to market their dungeon tiles as well. That was one of the things in 4th edition. I know that they did more so than in other editions, where they really tried to push you to get other stuff. So at the beginning of each of these, it actually tells you which dungeon tile set they're using. So basically, here we use this dungeon tile set, you should go buy a copy for yourself, kind of thing. So really good book though. I mean, it's, if you're just looking for encounters, the party shows up and you don't have anything prepared, and you can just flip to whatever level that they're at. And, for the most part, you can just pretty much run it and improvise along the way. Revenge of the Giants. I don't know why I bought this. It was probably cheap. I saw it was cheap, so I threw it in the cart at Noble Knight. I honestly have not even really looked at this book very much. It's an adventure. And I will presume it's with giants. But I don't know really much about it at all. And at some point I will probably, look through it some more. I believe it's the giants that they changed quite a bit. I think they changed how they did giants in 4th edition. So again, I could be wrong, but my only problem I have with running adventures involving giants, now Storm King's Thunder is one of my favorites, but is that the maps get really big, because naturally you're dealing with giants, and so you end up with having to draw maps that are just huge, and it's really hard to do that on a table, and it gets very hard to do that even in Roll20 because they're just so large. So but I would have to take somebody else's word for it on this particular adventure, because I have not looked at it myself in any detail. But I got a Remoraz there. But I have it, and at some point I'll look through it in more detail. So that's the hardcovers I have. There are other ones that I do not have, so that's something else. Like I said, even the same as with the more folder-like ones like Seekers of the Ashen Crown, those are probably lower on my list of priorities of the books that I want to own. So when I have to make choices about which ones I want to have, the adventure books are not so important to me. More so that I would get them on digital so that I can get the digital maps is probably what I would more be after there. So, on the subject of adventures, I guess this would be a good time to talk about the DM screen. As with the Dungeon Master's Guide, I think the 4th edition DM screen is among the best DM screens that has ever been released. I think the Pathfinder 1st edition DM screen was pretty good in the same way. Lots of content. You can just see just filled with tables for everything. It's got all the core rules that you're going to need to know, what actions you can do, what different skills are that you can do. It has the conditions in here, how the death saves work. I mean, information. There's no, other than the logo, there's no artwork taking up space on this. It is meant for the Dungeon Master, as a functional tool for the Dungeon Master to run the game. 5th edition, they really shifted to these being kind of a piece of artwork in themselves. And all that art, while it's nice looking, it takes up space, and it's it doesn't help you at all. Might have a great picture of a giant or something on there, but that doesn't help you at all when you're trying to run the game. And this one really does. Like I said, the Pathfinder 1st edition Dungeon Master's DM screen, I think also was the same way. I don't know if Pathfinder 2nd edition also kept that same formula. But this is like the best DM screen for that I've seen since, and they haven't replicated that in any of the DM screens they've released for 5th edition. All right, another set where I don't have all of the books. This is all the different players options and things like that. So these are books that the players might more use. Now, there's a lot of good stuff in here that a dungeon master can use in building an adventure, especially if you're going to have characters that fit some of these categories. I don't really actually use these very often. So Heroes of the Feywild, this is a soft cover reprint. So this I got from DriveThruRPG, and this is a case where I like having a physical copy, but I don't really need an original. I'm okay not owning an actual original hardcover. So I did a soft cover reprint from DriveThruRPG, and it's actually really nice quality. It's got a glossy cardstock cover, and the colors inside are really good. Certainly an actual original hardcover would have more glossy pages. These are more matte finish pages, but I don't think it loses anything. I think certainly if you're like me and you're mostly just looking for having the book as opposed to needing to have an original, it really fits the bill, and you now have a physical copy that you can touch and you can flip through and all that stuff. And so that's perfect for me. I wish they had more of the softcover reprints from DriveThru for some of those other books. There's a few that I don't have. Unfortunately, it seems like most of the ones that they have softcover reprints of, I already own the physical hardcover, so it doesn't really help me. There are a few other ones that I don't have, where I will probably get a softcover reprint rather than spend the money on a hardcover. So that's the Heroes of the Feywild. I've got Heroes of Shadow also, these, like I said, I haven't spent a ton of time. I think I did a video on Into the Unknown, and I didn't quite get my head around what they were trying to do with it. There's a lot of stuff in here, but it also seems like it's a little all over the place. And maybe that was their intention. They wanted to cover a lot of ground with it. So these are even after Essentials. Okay. So, I think the bottom line is, I'm not the target audience for these. I don't usually create a lot of characters. I'm usually creating encounters and things like that. So having all of the stuff for players options, I appreciate it. I'm glad they have it. And so you can make really cool characters. I think they're great books to have out there. But that's probably why I don't spend a lot of time reading through these, because they're just a little, outside of the things I really get into. So, but I think there's at least, cause I've got Heroes of the Feywild, I've got Heroes of Shadow, and I believe there's Heroes of the Elemental Chaos. I don't know if there's just those three or if there's another one as well. So I have, there's at least a couple more of those I don't have. What I do have is I have this one, the Dragonborn. This is a player's handbook races. So this isn't a book. It's it is a book, but it's a soft cover. What do you call it? It's a saddle staple, something like that. Saddle stitch. So it's more a splat book, I guess, 32 pages. And, goes into Dragonborns in detail. Now, I like this. I like that it gives the backgrounds of a Dragonborn. And so you can really get that history as you're building your character to try to understand where would a Dragonborn come from? What's all of the nuance that goes into being a Dragonborn? So you get all of that lore, which is great. They always throw in a few more powers for you. So they're really great. I don't use the book a lot, but I like it. They have another one of these for tieflings. And I do want to get that one as well. That's part of, again, more so because I want to have the collection of them, not necessarily because I would use that a whole lot. It's so the Dragonborn one and the tiefling one, those are the only two, player's handbook races books that they have. They never came out with any more beyond that. And those are just these little splat books. Whereas these other hardcovers go into much more detail because they're more about the locations that a character might come from, as opposed to just the race that a character might be. Let's see. Then we get into campaign settings. So let's talk a little bit about campaign settings. Let me start with these here. So This is another print on demand one that I have is Hammerfast. This was a different kind of book because it was it's also short. It's only 32 pages. So I'm presuming that the real copy of this is like the Dragonborn Races one, where it would be a saddle stitch with a staple. This is a print on demand one. This one is just black and white inside, so there's no color in it, which I'm presuming made it cheaper. It does have maps and whatnot. So I like this one. It's just in the same. This one I would probably get more use of for me versus the Races one, because this now is about a setting where it has all the stuff about how you might set an adventure inside Hammerfast, and there's some really good backstory stuff. Just the print on demand is a little weird because this picture that's on it, it's like clearly a small picture that they've enlarged, because you probably can't tell in there, but it's really pixelated. So the cover image on here is very pixelated. I don't know what the reason was for it. I mean, it's fine. Again, I have a physical copy and it serves its purpose. It does what I need it to do. So I'm good about that. Menzo Berenzon. This was the very last book for 4th edition. I should say is the very last book that used the 4th edition trade dress that had this logo and everything. But there actually is there are no mechanics in here. You'll notice that there's no powers to be had. There's no magic items. There's no monsters. There's no mechanics in here that would actually tie it to 4th edition. So the book is really good because it gives you a lot of great information about Menzo Berenzon. And so if you're wanting to set an adventure there, you get a lot of excellent information to help you set that. It also means that this book, because it's not tied to 4th edition so much, you could use this in any edition of the game. The information that's in here would work in any edition of the game. But this was the very last thing they published for 4th edition because they already knew it was going away. I think they stripped out all that stuff. If 4th edition was going to stay, this book would have been a little longer, and it would have included probably some new classes and some more race options and more powers and things like that. So, but it didn't. So you got kind of a smaller book, and they were just kind of wrapping things up. I also have a print-on-demand version of this one, and that one did really looks just as good as my other print-on-demand. So if you're wanting print-on-demand stuff, I do recommend it. I will say with print-on-demand, something else too is that I mentioned I have the print-on-demand versions of the Worlds and Monsters and Races and Classes. When they sent me the print-on-demand ones, I can't remember which one it was. It was the wrong book. It had the right cover on it, but inside was a completely different book. It wasn't even a D&D book. It was something else. And I just sent them a note and told them what was wrong. And I think I took a couple pictures of it. And within a day, they had apologized and sent me a new copy of it. And they printed out a new one that was correct. And were very apologetic and quick in making things right. So I was pleased with that. And actually, with my, I think it was my Hammerfast one. I think I called and made a mention that there was something in error in it. And I can't even remember what it was. I don't even think it was really an error. That I sent them a note and just said, hey, you might want to think about such and such that's incorrect. And I don't remember what it was even. They actually refunded me. They took it, and I was not really lodging a complaint. I was more just wanting to make sure they fixed it so that whoever else got the book, because it didn't matter to me, but it might matter to somebody else. So I was just letting them know. And they actually, again, apologized and refunded the cost of it. So Drive Through RPG, the print on demand stuff, they take it seriously. They want you to get it right. So, I do highly recommend it. They're not sponsoring this, but I just want to point out that they really do want to get it right for you. So, all right. Forgotten Realms, Eberron, little story. When I was first doing 4th edition, I got to a point where I decided I wanted to get a campaign guide. And these are the two choices I had. It was, do I do Forgotten Realms? Do I do Eberron? I had heard of Forgotten Realms. People had mentioned it. But I didn't know much about any of these, and I had to choose. And I was like looking at reviews and trying to figure out. And the thing I remember is that people were complaining because Forgotten Realms had the whole spell plague, I think, that they did. And in hindsight, I wouldn't have cared. I think it was actually a good thing the way they did it, and to open up the environment to new players and to not be burdened by all of the lore that had built up. So I like in hindsight, I like how they did that. But when I had to make the choice, I couldn't get both of them. I had to decide, and I went with Eberron. I liked the steampunk stuff in it. I thought it was neat. And it was just, it looked interesting to me. So I went with Eberron, got the campaign guide and the player's guide at the same time. Got Seekers of the Ashen Crown and was running Seekers of the Ashen Crown. But like I said, when I was running Seekers of the Ashen Crown and I was in the middle of it, 5th edition came out, and I switched over Seekers of the Ashen Crown to be 5th edition. And in reality, I've not run a lot of Eberron stuff. I think once I was running stuff in 5th edition, since Forgotten Realms was the default in 5th edition, that's what I ended up using in 5th edition. I picked up these 2 books more recently. I think I got this one shortly after 5th edition came out, and it was on sale at a store. The Player's Guide I got definitely more recently as just a used copy, but they're both good books. I like, there's so much stuff in here. I would actually complain about the 5th edition Eberron book because I feel like they basically just took this book and kind of made some changes to it. It's even the same maps and everything. So the 5th edition Eberron book is just really just built off of this one. Now, for all I know, this is basically the same as the 3rd edition Eberron book because I don't have that one. But anyway, the Forgotten Realms, a lot of good stuff in here too. I think this one had a map with it, likely that I tore out that I used. So, and like I said, because I didn't have any history with Forgotten Realms, the whole thing with the spell plague and the complaints about that wouldn't have bothered me because I didn't know anything about it anyway. So to me, it would have just been a brand new campaign setting. So, and which actually reminds me, and I see some folks mentioning it in the chat, is the Nentir Vale. So the Nentir Vale is like one of my favorite settings. So hang on, let me grab. So like Hammerfast is in the Nentir Vale, but Nentir Vale doesn't have a book for it because that would kind of go against what it's supposed to be. It's supposed to be this setting that you can do whatever you want with it. The whole Points of Light, where it provides you with the foundation of something that you can then go build an adventure on. And so, when you've got Fallcrest is kind of your main city, but it's a pretty small city, but it's very interesting with all the things that you would need to start an adventure. And, so it gives you the baseline that you need, but then, and it's relatively small. You're talking about maybe 100 miles diagonally across it. But you've got Fallcrest, you've got Winterhaven, you've got Hammerfast, you've got some big towns, and then these smaller regions, and you've got mountains, and you've got forests and lakes, and lots of stuff that you can do. And because it was brand new and did not exist before, there was no burden on a dungeon master to have to figure out, okay, if I want to run something in Fallcrest, what do I have to learn? What's happened in Fallcrest? You were expected to just do whatever you wanted with it. And it's a really interesting location, and you don't have the burden of all those years and years of lore that got built up. And so it's really nice. So the Dungeon Master's Guide has a nice overview of it, and then it gets into an actual adventure that you can run in the Nentir Vale just to get you started. So that in the Nentir Vale as a setting, certainly for a new dungeon master, is like my favorite setting because it does exactly what it needs to do. And in some ways, I'm kind of glad that it never went any further. When 5th edition came out, they stopped doing the Nentir Vale. And that's kind of good because now it is just what it was. They released it for 4th edition. You have just the content that came out with 4th edition. And now you get to do whatever you want with it after that. You don't have to, you're not constantly having to keep up to, with everything. You know, when they come out with a new book where they change some of the things, and build new lore or whatever, you don't have to worry about that because it's just isolated point in time that, has been captured. So, if anyone wants to think of a good thing that came out of 4th edition not lasting long, we'll put a spin on that one and go there. So, all right, next. So the next thing, I'll just mention this. I only have this one. This was the free RPG day. I don't remember which year this one was. 2010 or something like that. So they had published back, you know, at the time they were still participating in a lot of this stuff. They got away from it for several years. And this was their free RPG day offering for the 1 year, was Kyber's Harvest. I have not opened this one. I have a PDF of it, so I know what's inside. And this one is sealed, just as it would have been at the store if you went there for free RPG day. So I don't plan on opening this one. But it's a nice little, it's another kind of splat book. It's an adventure. It's black and white inside. It has, you know, a little map that's a punch out map. So it's kind of nice. And that's it. I think there's at least one more. There might be 2 more that they did on the free RPG days. I have to look those up and see. So I saw this one and it was fairly cheap to pick up. So I grabbed it, to add to the collection. I may or may not try to find the other ones, but, so that's kind of more of an odds and ends. So that's that one. And then I was saving this one for the last because it's different, and that's the Essentials. Despite me saving it for last, the red box starter set was my very first D&D purchase. Going to the game store and saying, hey, show me to the D&D stuff. And they found the red box starter set. They were confused because they saw the starter set and it had the same look as the, I want to say it was like the BX version. They used the same artwork in the red box and everything as one of the original D&D versions. And so they were actually confused, thinking it might have actually been that. But then realized it was 4th edition. It wasn't until much later that I even realized that this was Essentials and that Essentials was something different from 4th edition. So, but this, you know, if you're looking for the gateway drug for D&D, this was it for me. From the moment that I opened this book and started making my character using this, they kind of have this mini adventure where they walk you through, which is a choose your own path kind of thing. You're attacked by the goblins. What do you do? Do you reach for a sword? Do you try to cast a spell? Do you go help the injured? So it just asks you those questions, and then you, based on your answers, you go to different sections in here, and along the way it has you fill out your character sheet. It's a slightly different character sheet than the actual core 4th edition character sheet. But again, I didn't know any of that. I was just playing this game, and going through all that, I get my character, and you play through that adventure, and then you kind of have I think there's some rules here. Yeah, it tells you what the different actions are that you have, and then you play through another encounter using that, and then you move to the Dungeon Master's book, and then this one actually is a real adventure that you now, if you have your friends that you're with, you build your characters, and now whoever of you is going to be the Dungeon Master, you get to use this book, and it tells you all the stuff you need to know about movement and types of attacks and saves, rests, all the things that you would find in the player's handbook as well. It came with a nice map. This entire dungeon is on the map that it came with, and you fold that map in different ways, and you just run through all these encounters. I will say I remember skill challenges being very confusing to me. I didn't quite understand what I was supposed to do with them. Now I have a better understanding of how to work with them, and they make sense, but I can understand why they were confusing, because they were confusing for me. But anyway, red box starter set. This was my, this is what got me started. If anyone's looking to where to blame for my addiction to Dungeons and Dragons, it's right there. I pulled these out of the set that they came with, and I can't remember which came with which. One of these came with the Monster Vault, and one of them came with the Dungeon Master's kit. And I don't remember which one. If somebody in the chat remembers, chime in and tell. But on my shelf back here is the Dungeon Master's kit, and the Monster Vault came with these boxes, came with all kinds of tokens for different monsters, and as well as these books, the Dungeon Master's book and the Monster Vault. So the Dungeon Master's book is essentially the D&D Essentials version of the Dungeon Master's Guide. Has the same essential structure. Obviously, with any updates to the rules are captured in here. So much more compact. I actually wish they had a Dungeon Master's guide in this paperback format. Would have been nice. The Monster Vault, same deal. It had it came with all the tokens for the different monsters, and is basically your monster manual for the 4th edition Essentials. If I have a complaint that from the day that I got this book that it makes no sense to me, nowhere on the tokens does it indicate what the monster is. So some of them are not as obvious as others. So especially for someone who's new to the game, you've got a token with something like this on it. It's really hard for somebody who's not familiar with the game to know what that is. And the only way to know is to try to find that token in this book to figure it out. Where it would have been nice if the tokens actually had printed, like on the boundary or something, what the name of the monster was. So anyway, that's a nitpick from me. So those are the two. Those came in the boxes, Dungeon Master's kit and the Monster Vault. And then whichever one came with which, I don't actually remember which came with which. They each came with adventure. They're pretty good adventures. I played Ravens of Harkenwold several times. Kieran of the Winter King I've not actually played through, but I've read through it. It looks like a pretty good one. And they also came with maps, so poster maps for a lot of the locations, so it's really good. So those are really good. I'm glad that I have those, and they're really nice sets. Then there's these two books, also part of the Essentials line. These were just standalone books. Heroes of the Forgotten Kingdoms is I got this one because I wanted to play a druid. And so and this was the book I guess I didn't know about or want to get the Player's Handbook 2, or I thought this was basically a Player's Handbook 2, didn't realize the whole Essentials line thing. Whatever it was, this was what I got because I wanted to play a druid, and is essentially kind of Player's Handbook 2 for the Essentials. I didn't get this until much more recently. I bought it on Noble Knight again. You can see it's a little more yellowed. This would be your Player's Handbook 1 for Essentials. All the new rules for all of that. So that's both of those books. I do not have a rules compendium. I saw in the chat that the rules compendium is a must. It is on my list as one that I need to get, and I have it on the list. I will get it at some point. I definitely want to get. There's ones that are more critical for me. So I want to get the Neverwinter campaign setting, the Dark Sun campaign setting. I hear good things about, so I'll probably want to get that one. I think I want to get the Monster Vault, Threats to the Nentir Vale. Those are ones that are higher on my list. So, but I'm sure I'll circle around to the other one. So that's, yeah. And then the last thing that the last one I have to look at. So if we're going through all my stuff, if everyone's been keeping track, this should be the 46th item, because that's how many things I have, is the Book of Vile Darkness. I don't remember when I got this. I think I might have gotten this when there was a sale at the one store and I picked it up. And I will be honest with you, I don't think I've ever looked through this book. It looks interesting. I've opened it up. I'm sure I've paged through it. And I believe it's part of Essentials as well. But I've not done much with it. So if it's somebody's favorite, I apologize that I haven't looked at it and I haven't given it a chance. So I don't know what to make of it. At some point I will take some time to look through it. So, and there you go. That's my collection, if anybody's been keeping track of that. So, so let me see. I'll flip back over here. So the ones that I am really interested in getting is, like I said, I mostly want to do the core books are the things that interest me the most. So, and I've really got a lot of those. So a lot of the ones that I'm getting now are just to try to complete the collection. And I've kind of gone through and I've like rated them from which ones I really want to get the most versus which ones I'm okay not getting. So like I definitely want to get the Neverwinter campaign guide. I would like to get the 2 dragon books, which is something I should have mentioned with the monster manuals also. I was disappointed in the monster manual in that it doesn't have much about dragons. You know, I get that when they were published in the book, they were like, you know what? We won't put the dragons in the monster manual. We're going to make 2 separate books that'll be specifically about dragons. We'll make one about chromatic and one about metallic dragons, and it'll be great. There are a couple dragons. I think they might have like maybe 4 to 6 dragons in there, but not nearly what you would find typically in a monster manual. Considering the game is Dungeons and Dragons, I kind of am a little surprised that they took that route, and that's the kind of stuff that leads people to believe that they were really trying to maximize their money by separating these things out into different books. So, okay, 5 dragons in the monster manual. I was close. I said 4 to 6. So, and if it was 5, I guess I almost got it. So, yeah, and I think a lot of so those would be good ones that I have. I'm trying to look through my list of the ones I don't have. I probably would like to get the Dragon Magazine annual, because that's one that just would be a nice collector's one to have. And then the Monster Vault, Threats to the Nentir Vale. So, and a lot of the ones I don't have really, I think, fall into the category of like they're the adventures. And I don't necessarily, those aren't as important to me, physical copies anyway. So I think having the PDFs where I can get digital maps is really good for me. The Dark Sun Creature Catalog, that's another one that would probably be good. And I know I've heard good things about the Dark Sun setting, so it would probably be good for me to have that. And that would be some good things for me to use. Trying to see. Sorry, I've been going through the books so much. I haven't really been looking up at the chat as much as I should have, so sorry about that. So Reavers came with the Essentials kit. So I don't know which one. Oh, Cairn of the Winter King was the Monster Vault, and Reavers was the Dungeon Master kit. Okay, there we go. So that's what I was thinking it was. So Cairn of the Winter King came with the Monster Vault. But you know, I like those. So, you know, you have well, I'll never dig them out here. They're at the bottom, but you know, you have the folder like Seekers of the Ashen Crown, Keep on the Shadowfell. Those are nice because they come with maps and you got the booklets, but I like the box sets because you get the tokens and everything. So you kind of get this whole package. It's like if you're going to run that adventure, you get a box that basically has everything that you need to run that adventure, including the maps with the locations. And that's really cool for me. So having those was really nice, and have the tokens that you get to, for all the different monsters that you're going to use. So I like those. There's obviously only a couple of them, but I think they did a really good job on those. And those are, the adventures in there are really great when you think about that. Those box sets were things that they made to try to get people interested in the game. They were struggling with the core, so they needed to do this Essentials to try to jumpstart things. And so they simplified it, and they put together these box sets and said, here, you know, what do you think of this? And those adventures are they're decent adventures. They're pretty good, and they're easy to run. So I think they were doing what they needed to do, just unfortunately was maybe a little too late. So, So, oh yeah. So the dragons are using the old math. Yeah. That's unfortunate that they, with as much attention as they put on the mechanics of the game, it is a shame that when they actually released it, the math for the monsters is not what it should be. And I know that the adventures that I ran, that is a challenge, is that you get into a situation where the encounters start to really drag. And but by simply changing the math and saying, all right, let's reduce the hit points that you have, increase the damage, relatively simple changes, but it just makes everything go that much faster. So it's a shame that it took them 3 monster manuals before they figured that out. So, so I didn't see that. So the Dark Sun Creature Catalog, sounds like that's better than the Book of Vile Darkness. I couldn't say. I don't have either. So at some point I'll have either, and maybe I'll do a review and we'll talk about it. So yeah. So there you go. That's my collection of 4th edition books. I'd be interested to know from Open Graves. I do have Open Graves. Yep, I do have. Yes. I thought I had it. Secrets of the End. Oh, sorry. I'm not on that screen anymore. There it is. Open Grave. This is another one I have not looked at. Is this an adventure? Oh, I put this in with a campaign settings, but I guess it's an adventure book. Yeah, I don't, so I do have that one, but I have not actually looked at that one very much, so I don't have much information. But I'm curious, so the ones that I had, if you hung in there for all of that, which of the things did I not go over? So which basically, that would be something I don't have that I should. What's the ones that I absolutely should have that I didn't cover here? Because maybe I need to update my list of priorities and focus on some different things. So the Demonicon is definitely one that is higher on my list than some of the other ones. So, but yeah, there we go. That's my 46 D&D 4th edition books in my collection. And once the stream is done, I need to go back and put them back on my shelf and get them organized. But it's always nice for me to take them down and flip through them, because there's so much good stuff in there. I think, I have, I've got my 5th edition stuff. But I'll be honest, 5th edition is very adventure heavy for me. There's not a lot of books to help a dungeon master. There's not a lot of books that are just for the players. I know there's some, but where it's like, it seems like what they released for 5th edition is just lots of big, huge adventures. And that's been a complaint of mine for a while. Whereas with 4th edition, there were some hardcover adventures, and you had, but then you had like most of the adventures were more the folder based ones, where it was a shorter adventure and they release it as a trilogy, similar to kind of how they do with Pathfinder, the smaller books. I like that better because I rarely am going to play through an entire full 300-page hardcover adventure. But I will play through other ones, or at least use it to adapt to something else. And 4th edition has a lot more stuff that is just designed to help you create your own adventures and to run a better game and to create better characters. So I don't ever really flip through the 5th edition books and just look at them and be in awe of the content and think of all the cool things I can do with it. They sit there and they're nice and all, and I'm glad I have them. The 4th edition books, though, are ones that I'll take down and I will just flip through the Adventurers Vault or the Powers books and just read through them and see what's some of the cool things that you get to do. And I picture in my head, kind of the map, and if you're on a battle map and you wanted to use this power, how would that look and everything. So that's just one of my favorite things about 4th edition, and that you don't quite get the same experience, for me anyway, with 5th edition. So, all right. I think that's about as long as I can talk about my library. So, yeah, exactly. 5th edition, you get a lot of adventures. 4th edition gives you tools to make a lot of adventures. Exactly right. 100%. And I think that's the difference. That's one of the reasons I love 4th edition so much more, is because you're getting the tools to do something as opposed to just being given the thing. And when you're just being given an adventure, it's like you're kind of locked into that adventure, because they also are not giving you the tools to modify that adventure. Because honestly, the 5th edition Dungeon Master's Guide is like one of the worst Dungeon Master's Guide. 4th edition has 2 of the best, and 5th edition has like the worst. And I don't have a lot of hope that the 2024 Dungeon Master's Guide is going to be any better. I was really hoping it might be, but I don't know that it's gonna. We'll see in November what we get. It's interesting you mentioned the SRD, because there is an SRD for 4th edition. I'm gonna talk about this sometime in the near future. I'm gonna talk about this. So a little preview, because I was experimenting with a thing recently, and with regard to the 4th edition SRD. And I won't go into much detail, but there is an SRD for 4th edition. It is not like the SRD for 5th edition or 3rd edition, but there is one. And I think it would be fairly easy for them to take that and make it Creative Commons. They could even streamline it a little bit and it would be fine. That's what I'm hoping that they do. Anyway, I'm experimenting with a thing with regard to that. So stay tuned. I will talk more about that later. So I think that's it. I appreciate everyone for hanging in there as long as you did for all 46 of my D&D products. Definitely let me know if there's some that you didn't see in my collection that I should definitely put a priority on. I would like to know that so that I can adjust my list accordingly. But I always, any excuse to talk about 4th edition, any excuse to talk about my 4th edition stuff, I will jump on it. So I hope, I appreciate everybody hanging in there with me during this conversation. And I hope you enjoyed seeing my library for what it is. And look forward to seeing some of your comments and stuff about what I should do next with it. So remember, if you trying to put together another game, if you're interested in playing in one of those games, please do subscribe to the newsletter, and then sign up to get the invitations to play in those games so that you can participate in it. If you are interested in the next games, will probably be sometime mid-October or so. You should see those. So that's when we'll play them again. I don't know when my next live stream is going to be. I am not going to be around next week. So, but there will be a live stream certainly in the future. Next one might very well be the game. We'll see. Anyway, that's I had a great time. Appreciate everybody sitting here and listening to me talk about 4th edition and all my books. And whenever we get together again, I look forward to it. But until then, take care.